Your ADHD isn't holding you back. It's the story that you're telling yourself. Now, if you're an entrepreneur and you're already financially successful and you have a business, whether you're growing it or scaling it, the only reason it's going to hold you back is if you continue to tell yourself a story and you build an identity and a set of beliefs and the levels of emotions, and then that determines your actions and creates your results. And that is defined by you having ADHD. Now, the first place I want to start is with this whole idea of having ADHD. I am not a doctor, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not trained in anything medically to be able to form this opinion outside of my insights, my experience, the wisdom that I like to think I've gained, and having worked with entrepreneurs. I have research for this video. So first things first, ADHD is newer than you think. The label that you're building your identity around is barely a generation old. Just looking at the data here, the scale of the diagnosis and the speed of change has just dramatically risen in the past few years. The biggest thing that stands out to me is that more and more people are labeling themselves and diagnosing themselves. But the main thing as you read and see this research I want to get across is obviously ADHD and entrepreneurship. ADHD traits help you start businesses, they don't necessarily help you run them. And you probably experience this right now. You have a business or a set of businesses and you're growing bored or you're looking to change things, and you're just thinking to myself, if I launch a new funnel, a new business, a new offer, that's going to tweak things. I'm going to talk about something which gets misunderstood, which is self-sabotage. And in the context of business, one of the biggest examples of self-sabotage is breaking something, trying to fix something, tweaking something, adjusting something. Often that tendency and that behavior is going to do more harm to your business and potentially your life. And anyone that experiences or labels or identifies or has ADHD is at a bigger threat of doing this. I don't want you to see ADHD as your ceiling. I want you to see it as a weapon, as a tool. In life, in business, there is always going to be two ways to succeed. There's going to be a way to succeed because of and in spite of. If you have ADHD and you've labeled yourself or you're experiencing it, I want you to say to yourself, enough is enough, I'm gonna succeed because of. That alone, that key distinction, that change in language is gonna dramatically change the way that you think, feel, and act when it comes to this whole label of ADHD. But the first thing I want you to understand is what I call the pattern. Everything can be broken down into patterns, ceilings, and models or heuristics or mental models of seeing things. But let's just focus on patterns. Things are working, your business is growing, the revenue is climbing, but then something happens. And when something happens, normally in the case of ADHD, you get bored or things aren't growing or progressing at the rate that you want. And then you think to yourself, I'm gonna launch something new, I'm gonna change my offer, I'm gonna essentially blow up what's working. And the way that anyone that has ADHD explains this or describes this is they say, that's just my ADHD brain. Now, as I've just shared with the research, your brain is your brain. And whether you have ADHD or not, if you truly want to keep succeeding and growing in business, you have to succeed because of, not in spite of. There is a pattern to your behavior. And there's even a pattern to your beliefs, there's a pattern to your identities, and there's a pattern to your actions. I'm going to now say something which is potentially going to be challenging. ADHD barely has existed as a diagnosis. It wasn't really a thing until the late 80s, and it wasn't really recognized until 2013. The diagnosis rates have doubled in the past 25 years. Now, most of the TikTok content and maybe even the YouTube content you see on ADHD is misleading. And the traits around ADHD, the hyperactivity, the inability to focus, the desire for novelty and stimulation, those are real. I'm not here to challenge you and say that you aren't experiencing those things and your brain isn't potentially different. The thing which is optional is the story that you've attached to it, because the story we attach to our lives and our businesses is the part which is optional. And this is what creates meaning, is what creates specific patterns, and this is what allows you to either grow or to not grow. I see it as there being three patterns. The first is the circle. The second is the zigzag, and then finally we have the straight line. In the circle, you are chasing your own tail and you're making no progress. Then you have the zigzag. You make a little bit of progress, you fall back. You make a little bit of progress, you fall back. Essentially, it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Now, the issue with the zigzag, especially in the context of ADHD, is that you're not truly getting enough momentum and compounding effect of your life, and in this case, your business. And then we have the straight line. It's the shortest point from A to B, right? That's the straight line. As you grow and continue to move in a straight line, growth becomes effortless and you move from friction to flow. Now, that might seem too optimistic. It might seem like I'm hyping stuff up. But if you look at any entrepreneur who is growing and are in a straight line growth pattern, it's almost impossible for them to fail. Everything they do is succeeding and succeeding and succeeding. Anyone right now who believes that they have ADHD has created a story around it. They have built an identity around it. They have a set of beliefs. It's like, for example, sobriety, which I've shared on this channel when I quit alcohol 5 years ago. Once you quit something or once you stop doing something, a lot of people who quit it, they make it their whole personality and their entire identity. And it's the same thing with ADHD. And that is problematic. And if you have ADHD, or if you believe you have it right now, you're probably looking to manage it. You see it as something that you're stuck with for life. You see it as something that you can't escape from. The issue is whenever you manage something, you are staying stuck. And you can basically break down any area of your life into, am I surviving, striving, or thriving? People that are in this ADHD paradigm are great at starting things, and normally they're not great at running things. Just look at your life. You probably have started multiple businesses, started multiple offers. You're probably an incredible builder, or you're very good at starting things. But then once you have to move into the element of running and keeping things going, and maybe even the scaling stage, this is when you run into issues. And this is an opportunity. And I think the first thing to understand here is that any business you have, there are examples of. So there are examples right now of people that see themselves as having ADHD that are absolutely thriving. I'll give you one of the best examples I see right now online, and there's obviously multiple, but it just comes up to me. It's this guy called Taki Moore. So Taki Moore is essentially a coach for coaches, and he has, last time I checked, worked with people like Dan Martell as an example, who you probably know. And he's pretty public about having ADHD and about how his brain can't focus, but he is clearly thriving with ADHD. It doesn't hold him back. He hasn't become a victim, and he hasn't necessarily told himself a story which is going to limit his growth as an entrepreneur. That is a great example of how you can use ADHD to actually thrive instead of strive, or instead of survive. Now I'm going to briefly touch on a framework I use with all my private clients. Now, these are clients that pay significant amount of money, and they normally work with me one-on-one in high touch. And when they come to me, they are looking for fast growth and progress, but they're also looking to expand every area of their life. And the first framework that I walk them through, because this is one of the pillars, is what I call the causal operating sequence. And I also introduce them to their internal operating system. Your internal operating system is basically everything within. It's your identity, it's your beliefs and thoughts, and it's your levels of energy, your levels of emotion. These three areas is what determines, influences, and creates your actions. And this is what determines your results in life. So your internal operating system is always running 24/7, and this is the invisible layer and partly visible layer that creates all the results in your life. So right now, your business, your relationship, how much time freedom you have, what your actual team structure looks like, every area of your life can be traced back to your internal operating system. And then within your internal operating system is your causal operating sequence. And this is how it works. And we start at the top, which is your identity. And then at the bottom, we have your results. And the reason we start at the top and everything stems downstream is because the fastest way to change and transform is to upgrade your identity. What most entrepreneurs do before they come to me is they share that they've attended the masterminds, they have business coaches, they've been taking a ton of action, implementing tactics, funnels, business strategies. And the issue with that is before you get to strategy, you've got other areas. And the main area is your state, your internal operating system, and then we have your stories, and then we have your strategies. And if you're just always operating within strategy and there's a little to no awareness or context or intention around the stories you tell yourself, like the ADHD, then you're going to be limited in the growth and the success you have, and most certainly the speed, the certainty, and the power behind that growth. Next thing to understand here is that any ADHD entrepreneurs who define themselves as needing novelty, that is a belief. It is also normally like a I am statement. And keep it simple, in identity, your I am statement is I am an ADHD entrepreneur who needs novelty. And as an identity, you're going to conform to that, and you're going to have a key belief that for business to be fun, or for business to be exciting, or for me to grow, I need new things. I need new clients and customers. I need new funnels. I need new tactics. I always need something new. If you have this statement of basically, I need novelty, the issue is you're going to be stuck. And normally what you're going to do is you're going to start to change things, tweak things, and adjust things before they've reached an element of growth and an element of compounding. Just to quickly set some definitions, growth is throwing shit on a wall and seeing what sticks. And scaling is when you can put in one and get a greater output. So when you're in a growth stage, you are basically trying a lot of new things. And that is the issue with when you have ADHD, just test, and then something works. And then you finally realize that this is now something to scale. And then you get to the scaling stage, and then you're putting in one and getting three out. If you right now are in this paradigm of ADHD, I want you to stop defining yourself and focus on the outcome. Because you can break everything down into essentially what is the outcome? So what do I want? Why do I want it? Please just keep going why and get to the core driver and the cause, because that is what's going to determine your rate of change and your speed of change and growth, and just how you can make, for lack of a better word, a quantum leap. Those quantum leaps come from this type of thinking and feeling and acting. And then we let go of any limitations, any what I call installed ceilings, and anything that you believe is going to hold you back. So I want you now just to look and reflect and get honest with yourself and say, has this identity of being an ADHD entrepreneur served me? Has it held me back right now? Is it a limitation, or is it allowing me to grow? So then finally we get to living and operating in a box versus living and operating in a lane. When you define yourself in a box, it is very difficult to think and act outside of a box. You're going to conform to that box, and there's going to be certain things that you can do, certain things that you can't do, and it's all going to revolve around, well, I'm in a box and this box is ADHD. When you're in a lane, however, you see it as a lane of ADHD, but I can still move forward and grow. And allow me just to briefly share some of the shapes here for everyone, just so we're kind of aligned on the. So let's talk about the first one, which is the box. If you're in a box, and this is your ADHD, and I'm going to put it in red right now, just to signify that you do not want to be nor act within and operate from a box. And you're going to have limitations. All of this here is limitations. And within this box of the limitations that you have, you're going to come up with stories, excuses, rationalizations, and insert. To keep this simple, you're going to be the effect. You're going to see ADHD as something happening to you instead of for you. This box is what limits your growth, because imagine that this is you right here and you're looking to grow. Well, you can only get to here because you're limited by the box. And even if you want to grow this way, same thing. This is your ceiling and this is your floor. Now, let's look at a lane, and I'll keep this basically the same. So same floor, and this is your lane. So same person, and this is you here, and this is you here. So immediately we are doing a key shift, and this is a reframe, which is we are going from box to lane. And as you'll see, this is your floor, and there is no ceiling. This here is your ceiling. And then this here, which is your limitation in your mind, these are your limitations, or whatever you want to define it as. They're just here and here. Whereas in a box, you're capped at the top and you're capped at the bottom. I'm just using this as an example, but really you're not capped anywhere. So then you're going to be moving in the straight line. And in here, even if you move in a straight line, you're limited. So I want you to move from being in a box to moving in a lane. You've probably heard this before, and I'm going to keep saying it. The bottleneck is not in your business, the bottleneck is you. And what I mean by that is that there's obviously areas of your business which need to change, but they almost all stem back to you, the entrepreneur, the man behind the business. By actually changing your internal operating system, upgrading your identity, having a new set of beliefs, operating from a higher level of energy, and then changing your actions, that's what's going to determine your results in life. I want you to go through everything that we've discussed, and then I want you to start to reflect and say to yourself, if this is right and I have been held back by my ADHD, what am I going to do today and how am I going to change? And the first thing you're going to do is start to actually journal and reflect, but then most importantly, you're going to start taking action. Finally, just to wrap up this video, you're not broken. You don't need fixing. Your brain isn't broken. Because ADHD traits, those are real. But the stories that we assign, those are optional. Now, I have a quick question for you. Let me know. Introduce yourself. Tell me about your story, your label, your diagnosis, your condition of ADHD. Show me how it shows up in your life. But then most importantly, tell me, what is your new story? What are you now going to do, having known about the box and having known about the lane? And I'm going to read every comment and I'll help and I'll respond to you. But if you want actual specific help, I want you to click the link below. Thank you for watching. Take care.